Chicken breeds aren't what you think they are. So most people think that chicken breeds must all share some kind of bloodline. So just for example, Plymouth Rocks must all come from some kind of Plymouth Rock bloodline. They must have started from the same stock somewhere back in history, but that's actually not the case at all. Today, I'm going to talk about how you maybe have been led to believe that your chickens are purebred because they share some kind of genetic heritage, and why that's not necessarily the case. So chicken breeds are actually classified solely based on their looks, and sometimes on egg color. That can be a part of it for certain breeds, but it's not about bloodlines. So here's how it works. Every chicken breed has a standard, and I guess I'm saying every chicken breed. It's not necessarily every chicken breed, but most of the chicken breeds we know of have a standard. That standard just describes the so-called perfect version of the bird. So you can find standards online for the breeds that you like, but they're basically just very, very long descriptions about every single physical feature a breed should have. And who gets to decide what the perfect bird is? Well, here in the U.S., it tends to be the American Poultry Association, the APA, or the American Bantam Association, the ABA. And a lot of their decisions are somewhat arbitrary, but that's a different story. So chicken breeds are based on looks, which are based on these standards. And that means that most chicken breeders are trying to breed their birds to meet the standard for that particular breed. So let's just think about what that means for a minute. So let's just take the Plymouth Rock as an example, and we'll look at the barred variety of the Plymouth Rock. The barred Plymouth Rock chicken is a chicken that looks a certain way. It has a barred feather pattern, obviously. It's got yellow legs, a single comb, and it's got many other features set by the standard. And the standard will even tell you how many points the comb should have and what shape it should be. So the standards get very specific here. But what's interesting is that the actual bloodlines of the Plymouth Rock don't matter. And so that means that your barred Plymouth Rocks may have a totally different heritage than my barred Plymouth Rock. So mine might have some Cochin and Dorking mixed in somewhere, and yours might have some Spanish mixed in somewhere. So to better explain this, let's go back in history for just a second here. The Plymouth Rock breed standard was formalized back in the late 1800s, and at that time there were a whole bunch of different breeders that had already worked on their own varieties of barred chickens. And these varieties were close enough to the standard that they could start breeding to the standard. And so these different breeders had used different breeds to make their barred varieties, but their barred chickens were then all considered to be the same breed because they looked similar despite having come from very different origins, potentially. And this means that you could, with a lot of hard work and time, you could make your own barred Plymouth Rock breed from scratch, just from mixing other chicken breeds together over perlate. Actually, that's Quiggles. You can make your own barred Plymouth Rocks from scratch just by mixing a bunch of other breeds together over many generations. And that actually has been done for some breeds. So, for example, the Sultan chicken. So Sultans are this incredibly old Turkish breed of chicken. They are adorable, and they actually went almost entirely extinct during the World Wars in Europe. So there were still some in Britain, but the Sultans were otherwise lost. And so because the numbers were so low, the breed was reconstructed by mixing other breeds together until they came up with a bird that fit the physical standard of the Sultan. And so that means the vast, vast majority of Sultans, almost every single one that we have today, it doesn't have any of that original Turkish Sultan blood. So if you've got Sultans, they were concocted from entirely non-Sultan breeds. And then just one last interesting thing to think about. Some varieties of the same breed are not actually related to each other at all. So let's look at Orpingtons, for example. So the black Orpington, which is available in the US, but it's less common, this variety was made from crossing Minorcas, Black Plymouth Rocks, and Langshans. That's how that bird was created. The buff Orpington, on the other hand, was made from crossing Golden Spangled Hamburgs, Dark Dorkings, and Buff Cochins. So black and buff are two different varieties of one breed, Orpingtons, but these two varieties were created from totally different breeds. So the two varieties aren't actually related at all, at least not when they were created. I mean, today, who knows how people might have mixed them together? And the whole point is that different strains of these varieties could have been made in different ways. Because again, it all just comes down to the way they look. And I just wanted to share this little tidbit with you today about chicken breeding because I recently received a message from Tripping Over Dogs, great name, asking me about what breeds her chickens might be or what crossbreeds they might be. So this reader has a chicken who's supposed to be a Silkie, but the chicken has, in the reader's words, gorgeous, soft, large white feathers. So not silky feathers. And then she goes on to say, 4 kinds of chickens were hatched from one batch of quote-unquote silky eggs bought at a sale. All were white. Some had silky feathers with red combs, yellow beaks and feet, which are not silky features if you're not aware. And then she goes on about this, but she basically says that all these chickens had some silky features and some non-silky features based on the Silkie standard. And then she asks me, I'm thinking they may have been crosses between Sultans and Silkies. Any ideas? So, Tripping Over Dogs, maybe there's some Sultan in there. However, Sultans don't have yellow beaks or feet either. So, these aren't pure Silkie Sultan crosses, whatever that means. And your birds might not have Sultan at all. I just have no idea. There could be any number of breeds mixed in there somewhere in their lineage. And it really is kind of impossible to know where these characteristics are coming from without talking to the breeder that you bought the eggs from. But it sounds like the breeder you used hasn't perfected his Silkie strain yet, because if these chickens are supposed to be Silkies, then they shouldn't have that much variation. I personally wouldn't care. I love all chickens and I just want my chickens to be healthy. That's all I care about. And it sounds like you're happy with your chickens too, whatever they are. And then another thing is that a lot of times breeders will mix in another breed into some generations of their quote pure breed. And they do that for one thing, it helps them from becoming too inbred, which can happen and does happen with chickens more often than we'd like to think. And they also do that though because sometimes another breed that's not related to them may have a quality that they need more of in their strain. So they're trying to breed to the standard and they end up with these birds that maybe don't have one of the qualities of that standard. So then they actually will bring in a bird from a different breed with that quality, breed that bird in, and then start breeding the offspring that have that quality together and with others. But just as an example of that, if someone's Plymouth Rock strain isn't fluffy enough, they maybe will try to get Plymouth Rocks from another strain from some other breeder, but they might add in a totally different breed. So they might add in a Cochin just into that mix to try to get their birds fluffier. And then they'll breed that Plymouth Rock Cochin hybrid back to more Plymouth Rocks. And then whatever of those offspring have the best traits the breeder wants, he'll breed those. So breeding chickens is a really complicated process. It's not straightforward. Breeders come up against so many challenges and they handle those challenges in a lot of different ways. And so, Tripping Over Dogs, since you bought hatching eggs, you are seeing a lot of the imperfect, from a breeding standpoint, offspring. And if you were just buying Silkie chicks from this same person, it's very possible that he might just sell you chicks that look like Silkies and you'd have no idea that they have all these other traits within them. And if you were to breed them, they would not meet the Silkie standard closely at all. So I am sorry that I can't answer your question in more detail than that. I just have no idea what breeds have been mixed to form your beautiful chickens. But if you're really curious, the breeder could answer that for you. Either way, your chicks sound absolutely adorable, and I hope you have the best time raising them. Happy chickening.